I've done it. I finally discovered the real-life, real-world time and dates for the events of Resident Evil 4 to take place in. I did the math, did science, I put the work in using geographical clues, I even went down to my local library and researched every known animal in the game. And, as usual, I examined every single document and cutscene in the series and used all these findings to narrow everything down to one single day in 2004. The only possible day for Leon to arrive on scene in Mexico. Oops, I meant Spain. Anyway, I did all this because a couple of you guys weren't satisfied with my Who Killed Lady Plaga investigation, claiming that I could never actually rule out any of the suspects because I never discovered an approximate time of death for her murder. And normally I'd just delete comments like these, but this came to me at a time where I've got nothing better going on besides waiting for the real Resident Evil 4 to be released. So I've reopened the case once again. But before I begin, I gotta say thanks to all my RE-tards out there. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. And special shout out to Experiments. Sorry I got your name wrong for so long. If anyone else out there would like to become a member, the links to my Patreon are down below. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share this video if you enjoy Resident Evil content like this. Okay, now let's get back to the investigation. So, we already know that this game doesn't provide any real dates to work with. No dated journal entries, no email logs, no timestamps, no hidden dates on the computer monitors or security feeds. Nothing. Just a couple of vague lines linking this game to other events in the series.
I died in a crash 2 years ago. Is that what they told you?
As well as this weak-ass report on the abduction of Ashley Graham. And that's it, seriously. The game doesn't even tell us what year it's set in. But thanks to the History of Resident Evil file found within the Resident Evil 5 archives, we can see that this game takes place in 2004. And just from observing with our own eyes, we can tell that this game takes place over the span of one ridiculously long night. So this information didn't really narrow down the search field, but it's a start. And thanks to this game providing Leon with a map and compass, finding these exact dates shouldn't be that difficult. All I need is to find the moon first. And what do you know? It's a full moon, just like every single video game ever. I was actually hoping for a challenge, but this'll work. The next step is to look up the records of every full moon in 2004, and I discovered there were 13 in total, giving us 13 days that this game could potentially take place on. So now, I just needed to eliminate 12 of these days, but I'd have to get creative to do so. So I set out to find Leon's height, and according to this concept art for the animated film Damnation, Leon is 180 centimeters tall, which is about 5'11" for normal people. So now all I needed was to find an object that was around the same height as Leon, because this fixed camera on my shoulder wasn't allowing me to see my own shadow on the ground. But the nice thing was, I didn't have to search for too long. Turns out, the perfect object was just sitting in the middle of the second room. This spigot, or trough, or whatever you want to call it, is almost the same height as Leon. Its angles are perfectly square, and the water level, seen in all four corners, is at the same height, telling us this is on level ground, which gives us the perfect conditions for measuring shadows. And the best part is, the sun is just casting the shadow directly north. Look at that. Again, making my job a whole lot easier. It's like the devs just slapped everything up in the sky at their default settings or something. The only problem now was correctly measuring this virtual shadow. It doesn't really matter the measurements I use on the object and shadow, just as long as the ratios between the two are correct in relation to the sun and shit. So I tried fabricating my own 100-notch ruler within Photoshop and applying it to several different angled snapshots I took of the object. But none of the findings were consistent with one another. I just couldn't get a good square angle of the image to work with from the west, and from directly east, it wasn't working either. I wasn't sure if the perspective was skewed at this angle, and I didn't want to make any guesses. So I busted out the VR once again, but this time I wasn't looking for a stick up Lady Plaga's ass. This time I was bringing in my own stick, a 2-foot ruler and a level. But before I jacked into the Matrix, I had adjusted my in-game height to that of Leon's, and I gotta say, it's looking pretty accurate. My eye line is about right where Leon's was from his side profile. So with that, I began measuring. aligning the virtual object with my studio wall, allowing me to accurately measure the object in-game. Turns out the object is 5 feet 7 inches. And as for the shadow, this one was a little trickier to measure. I didn't have the floor real estate in my studio to physically measure the shadow with my VR headset on, so my solution to this problem was to just cut off my hands and leave them at either end of the shadow.
Your right hand comes off?
And it actually worked. I double-checked my findings with measuring tape and came to the conclusion that this shadow is 7 feet 8 inches, a whole 25 inches longer than the object's height. Now all we had left to do was find which region of Spain this game was set in, and we'd be able to eliminate the full moon dates when compared to the shadow results telling us which altitude the sun was on those dates. So I started looking at the geographical shit presented in the game. Now, I gotta say, I don't know too much about Spain, but I'm pretty sure you can find these silly-ass castles all over the place, so I focused my attention on the fact that Sadler has a World War II battleship stored in his garage, as well as liquid hot magma flowing on the mainland. So obviously this is going to be on the coast of Spain, but as it turns out, the border of Spain is also on a microtectonic plate called the Iberian Plate, which separates the European and African tectonic plates. So I guess this cartoon lava is an actual possibility here. Crazy. Next, I turned my attention to the animals, and I was surprised to find that literally every single one of these creatures discovered in this game is native to Spain. These big-ass ravens, these bats, big tuna and little tuna, as well as these tarantulas, according to Wikipedia. Oh yeah, and don't forget about these super rare and elusive rhino beetles. Turns out these are all over Spain too, but they're hard to come by outside of the summer months, which could be another clue that this game doesn't take place in mid-2004. For some reason, the fans believe this game takes place in the summer of 2004, believing Ashley was abducted while returning home from college, but the file never even hints as to when this happened. Also, don't forget this Policia guy is freezing his balls off in the opening cutscene.
It's freezing.
And all the leaves are on the ground, so I'm calling it now. We can already eliminate the summer months from this time frame. Anyway, the other two animals I haven't mentioned yet were more important, seeing as they can only be found in specific regions in Spain. The Iberian wolf is a subspecies of the gray wolf, and they live in the northwest Spain region and Portugal. And then there's Del Lago, which is endemic to the forests surrounding the Andalusian mountains. So now we have two different locations that can be close to the coast while resting on fault lines. So now I just need to run the numbers to eliminate the days from our full moon dates. And for that, I had to convert my measurements into meters. So an object standing 1.7 meters tall in these two locations would have to cast a shadow length of 2.33 meters facing true north on the exact day of the full moon. And nowhere in Spain is this possible on 11 of the 13 dates. The dates eliminated are January 6th, March 6th, April 5th, May 4th, June 3rd, July 31st, August 29th, September 28th, daylight, November 26th, and December 26th, leaving us with only two available dates. Also, a shadow cast at this length to the north is not a possibility in the northwest region of Spain on the dates of these full moons, so this eliminates the northwest region. But seeing how Ada flies to the south over water and then to the sunrise to the east over more water, I was never going to accept this location to begin with. I believe she's flying away over the Mediterranean Sea here. So that only leaves us with two possible dates here, February 6th and October 27th. So the area where the salamanders live, south of the mountain range, is the best match. The shadow cast here at 1:30 p.m. matches that of the game shadows when Leon arrives on scene. Sunset here would be at 6:45 p.m., around when Leon passes out in the cabin, giving him a 12-hour window to kill Salazar, travel to the island, rescue Ashley, kill Krauser, and kill Sadler, all before sunrise. And Ada's exit works here too. As for the shadow on the October 27th date, this only works along the northeast region of Spain. Leon would have to arrive on scene at 1:38 p.m. for the shadows to match at the village. Sunset would be at 7 p.m. and sunrise would be at 8:21 in the morning, giving Leon an extra hour of nighttime to complete his mission. but I really doubt this would be the correct location for this mission. Because of the high activity along the Mediterranean coastline and its close proximity to populated areas, plus the extreme distance from the wolves and salamanders locations. But for the sake of the argument, let's just say they're hiding in a secluded pocket away from society where, as you know, they refuse to switch to the euro but still have internet access and resources to develop bioweapons undetected. So now all we gotta do is just pick which one of these dates is correct. So, from here on out, I'll be making my case why I believe the correct date is February 6th, even though, in the opening monologue of this game, Leon states it's been 6 years since the destruction of Raccoon City.
6 years have passed since that horrendous incident.
Which would place the events at the tail end of 2004. But, here's why I don't believe him. 2004 was an election year. If the Los Illuminados' plan was to take over the President of the United States, you'd probably want to take him over while he still has power. They wouldn't risk their plan just days before the election with the off chance that they'd only have power long enough to transfer it over to another president. And to be as thorough as possible, I examined every single event on or around 2004, and surprisingly, not a whole lot happened that year. Just one little incident that resulted in the deaths of another 100,000 people or so. This time, it was off the coast of the Mediterranean on the floating metropolis known as Terra Grigia, an incident that granted the Federal Bioterrorism Commission emergency powers from the UN that stripped the EU of their powers and authority in the event of a bioterrorist threat, a power and authority that would probably come in handy if, say, the president's daughter was abducted by a bioterroristic cult. But here's Leon being sent in alone to a foreign EU country trying not to start an international incident. And yeah, I know this game didn't exist yet, but it's still something to consider, especially since Capcom is remaking everything. I wonder if they'll even acknowledge these events in the real Resident Evil 4 coming out next week. So, I did a little more research into Revelations. I wanted to know when this terror attack happened. The only problem was, Revelations, like every other game after RE4, doesn't even give us a clue as to when these events are taking place. All we know is that the terror attack happened in 2004, and Chris and Jill's mission takes place exactly 1 year later. Luckily though, this game hits us with a mission timestamp after every ad break. It's not much, but it's enough to determine the dawn and sunrise times of the Mediterranean Sea in 2005, which, unfortunately, turned out to be bogus. According to the records from 2005, nowhere in the sea was it physically possible to witness a sunrise at 5:30 a.m. and a dawn that happens at 5:02 a.m. I couldn't believe it. Had Capcom really not done their homework here? How could they make such an obvious fucking mistake? I was disgusted, but then I remembered that Clive R. O'Brien's base of operations, the BSAA headquarters, is located in England. You can actually see all the nonsense mission times and global time zones in the background of their office at their headquarters, meaning these mission times are being recorded in England's Western European time zone, which places Jill and Chris's dawn and sunrise a whole hour later in the general European time zone, giving us a dawn and sunrise time that could only be found in June of 2005, meaning the Terra Grigia panic happened in June 2004, and give or take a week, seeing as the panic lasted 21 days. So I believe February 6, 2004 is our date. It's cold enough to freeze your balls off, the nights are long, the US didn't have emergency powers over the EU, the location south of the mountains works with the shadows, and the area can hold many lakes and rivers, so it's probably a nice place where you could lose a World War II battleship. But if you want to take Leon's word for it, go ahead. I even found another piece of supporting evidence for the October 27th date, found within Darkside Chronicles. During Operation Javier, I was able to determine that this game takes place in November 2002, which could work with Krauser's claim, stating that it's been 2 years since he faked his death. And from that game, we know it takes place on the equator. In the final cutscene, we can see the monarch butterflies migrating, and everyone knows that Ecuador is the fucking monarch butterfly capital of the world, so this game has to take place in or around there. But again, the characters in this series are always wrong with their recollection of time. If an event lasts 6 weeks, they'll claim it lasts 3 whole months, just like they did when they searched for Jill's body before declaring her dead. So I'm going to go with the science and circumstantial evidence on this one. So for now, Resident Evil 4 takes place on February 6, 2004. At least, until the real Resident Evil coming out next week completely ruins this video. Anyway, that's it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments, do you think this game was set in October 2004 or February 2004? Also, feel free not to call me out in the comments. I'm not a scientist or anything, so get off my back already. Figure out Lady Plaga's approximate time of death on your own. I got games to play. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, share the video, and make sure to subscribe to get notified for the next video. Thanks. Bye.